Hi everyone, welcome to week 14 of Lit 215. Guys, we are starting our final novel for the semester. How crazy is that? I know that the end of the semester can get really nuts and everything's going to start kind of piling on. So this week we're going to talk about starting our last novel, the fifth and final of our course, and then also drafting our literary projects. So I like to kind of start drafting now because I know, like I said, the end of the semester gets nuts. And I want you guys to be prepared and to kind of take a bit of a weight off those last few weeks. So, assignments this week include, we do have a reading quiz and a discussion board due on Saturday. I decided to push these due dates back because obviously it's a holiday weekend and Thursday I imagine that you guys will be busy and spending time with family and friends. So I want you to kind of relax and take a step back. But we do still have these assignments due this week. Also, I would like to see whatever you have for your literary project draft on Sunday. So I don't want you all to panic about these drafts. I want you to just take a deep breath, look over all of the readings and all of the materials we've gone over this semester, and then just get started. So what I would like to see for your draft, say you're doing a PowerPoint, I would like to see 10 slides with a rough outline of what you're eventually going to put in them. If you're doing the analysis essay, I'd like to see, let's say, 3 to 4 pages just getting started. For the original literary piece, that creative writing, I'd like to see, even a couple pages already written or maybe an outline of what you plan to. I really want this to be just a conversation about what your project will end up being. So I want you to take the draft seriously, but I don't want you to freak out about it. What is not good is if you have nothing. All right, the draft is meant to get you started, get the ball rolling, and eventually have something to revise. So along that same line, we are gonna meet during week 15 for a conference, which is gonna be just a one-on-one conversation between you and me, where we go over your draft and what you have so far and make sure that you're on the right track, check where you are in the class, and just make sure that we finish out the semester strong. So the conference sign up link is here in our PowerPoint. I'm also going to post it to Blackboard. And I just want you guys to sign up for a time that works for you. So we will meet via Microsoft Teams. So the meeting link is here. Just put your name next to a time that works for you. I also have times on here Monday and Wednesday later in the evening if you work full time during the day. I also have some times in the morning and in the afternoon during the week. So hopefully one of those will work for you. If none of that works, please shoot me an email. And what we'll do is find a time that does. But the conference is a required part of the draft, so don't skip it. All right. And I find that students that conference with me invariably do much better than those that don't. And that's why I require it. So let's move on to our novel that we're starting this week. So we are starting When They Call You a Terrorist, which is a Black Lives Matter memoir by Patrisse Khan-Cullors and Asha Bandel. So Patrisse is one of the founders of the Black Lives Matter movement, and this is a description of the book from Google Reviews. So it says, following the acquittal of George Zimmerman in the fatal shooting of Trayvon Martin, 3 women, Alicia Garza, Opal Tometi, and Patrisse Khan-Cullors, came together to form an active response to the systemic racism causing the deaths of so many African Americans. They simply said, Black Lives Matter, and for that, they were labeled terrorists. So before even jumping into the book, I want you guys to think about really what the title is even saying. What is the significance of being called a terrorist? And I think a lot of times we think of this in the context of like Islamophobia after 9/11 and associating Muslims with terrorism, which we talked about with internment. But what's the significance of Black people standing up for their right to live being labeled a terrorist? I think the implications are nuanced. There's some subtle differences there, but the introduction to this text by Patrisse really does kind of comment on the significance of that term and what implications that has for Black people and their communities. So the founders mentioned in the memoir include Alicia Garza, who, following the acquittal of George Zimmerman in the Trayvon Martin case, she posted on Facebook a simple post that just said, "I continue to be surprised how little Black Lives Matter." And she said, "You matter, I love you, our lives matter." And I think that was a really powerful statement, really just for processing what was happening. But the post actually ended up going viral a couple years later after the protests in Ferguson and the death of Michael Brown. And Ferguson obviously is, part of our community's history. Even though we're in Illinois, and I don't know where you all live. I live in St. Louis. I grew up around this area, in the metro area, and I think the events of Ferguson really did rock our communities. And so I think that this text in particular really has local significance to us. Then another founder was Opal Tometi, who actually now goes by Io, but she was credited with the social media presence of Black Lives Matter, and she kind of worked behind the scenes, whereas Alicia and Patrisse were more kind of front runners of the movement. And then Patrisse, who is the co-author of When They Call You a Terrorist, she was the one that added the hashtag Black Lives Matter, and she is one of the co-authors. So behind this movement, what I think is really... the word I want to say is cool, but that's not what I want. I think it's really impactful that this movement was started and run and encouraged by 3 women, 3 mothers, 3 Black activists who just wanted to see change in their communities and who wanted to provide an outlet for people in their communities who were feeling terrorized and oppressed and scared. So there is a video linked here. It's an interview with the Black Lives Matter founders. I'm actually going to post this to our course for you all to watch this week, since I don't want to run my video too long. But it's just a great kind of overview of why Black Lives Matter started and where it's kind of at now. So when you kind of think about the movement of Black Lives Matter, something that's mentioned a lot in this first section of the book, and that's important to the movement, is actually the impact of a 1970s push to implement what was called the War on Drugs. So I wanted to give you guys a little background on this sort of political agenda, and there's also a reading for this week on the War on Drugs. So in June 1971, President Nixon at the time declared what came to be known as the War on Drugs. So kind of spurred by this youthful rebellion at the time in the 70s, a lot of kids were probably getting into cocaine and marijuana and LSD. And remember, the 60s and the 70s were a time of sort of free love and expression. And the Nixon administration decided to crack down on that very seriously. But what this did, and I think primarily what really impacted Black communities in particular, was the expanding of drug agencies, mandatory sentencing, no-knock warrants, and deciding that marijuana would be listed as a Schedule I drug, which means that it's the most restrictive category of drug use. So marijuana was then put on the same sort of level as crack cocaine. And what that meant was that non-violent drug offenders, people who were found with marijuana, for example, were inevitably and immediately imprisoned. So this led to rapidly increasing prison populations and mass incarceration, particularly of those in Black communities, particularly young Black men. And this had a devastating impact on Black communities and sort of really started snowballing this generational fear of law enforcement, of discrimination at the hands of our government. And I think that the War on Drugs was very, very pivotal in what later led to the Black Lives Matter movement. So please take the time to read through the reading that I have for you guys this week. And, you know, if you're not aware of this history, then educate yourself on it. I think this was something I learned about in college, and I just remember being kind of blown away by what I didn't know. So this week, we're reading the first 6 chapters of When They Call You a Terrorist, and that's what our reading quiz will focus on. Then finally, don't forget your literary project drafts. So remember your options. The draft, like I said, is going to be a rough rendition of what's to come. I do want something complete, but it does not need to be perfect. You have to have 5 readings included. 3 of those readings have to be literature. Don't forget that. And then just read the draft assignment to help you, okay? If you have questions, please, please, please email me. I am here to help. I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I will see you guys soon.